This is the elevator pitch for the UN Office of the Future. The UN Office of the Future is a concept right now that we are putting into action. It's based upon a philosophy that was enunciated by Lester B. Pearson, the former Prime Minister of Canada, when he was active down at the United Nations, when he proposed the notion of a global tax. Since that time, the global tax has fallen into disrepute, and it is not possible to manufacture such a thing. Yet we know that it's needed, but it can't be done because of a number of things. One of the main things being the United States have passed a law saying that if the UN ever puts a global tithing out, that gives them good cause to resign from the United Nations. So the way around that is the way we are proceeding with the UN Office of the Future. The UN Office of the Future is not associated with the United Nations, and we're saved so much of the bureaucratic BS that goes on down there that we are in a very fortunate position. The model that we're using was presented by myself at the inaugural meeting of the Foundation for Culture of Peace, called the Madrid Documents. The Madrid Documents were a concept document of how we are going to develop a funding base to fund the particular problems that we're experiencing on the planet, well beyond what they're discussing at COP21, although our system will facilitate the distribution of those monies and justify our existence beyond any other need for justification. Certainly the fact that we're going to be spending $1 trillion a year for the next 10 years and we haven't yet developed a distribution system that is adequate gives one pause for thought. Thoughts for pause. So, the UN Office of the Future is going to be in 36 United Nations regulated countries. Those countries that already are considered donor countries. Now, we want to make a distinction between donor countries and receiving countries, because in the donor countries, they do not have a position called UN Resident Coordinator. That position is relegated to the countries that are receiving countries. Now, for some reason, nobody bothered to plan that the donor countries should share with the receiving countries in a particular way. Rather, we go through the very expensive process of funding either on the UNDP or UNICEF or the World Bank. Those particular agencies work on the principle called the 30-30 principle, 30% off the top twice before money gets out into the community. Our process will save at least 30% off every $1 trillion being spent, hopefully more, but at least 30, which gives us 300 billion a year for 10 years. So we're out of the planned expenditures, we'll save almost $3 trillion out of this money being spent by virtue of our system. Now, our system is going to be run by the UN Resident Coordinator, newly trained in each of the donor countries. When I say newly trained, the individual is going to develop a database. Well, he or she will have staff, but they will develop a database based upon the CIA report for that country. And there's a whole slew of international organizations that is involved with each country, and they have no way up to this point of cooperating. They don't talk to each other. They are some of them do, but I would say there's at least 30 agencies in every country And for all intents and purposes, they operate in their own silos of information and don't coordinate with the other agencies. So this is something that's going to change, and our processes will work along the lines of integrating those international NGOs, along with the funding being provided by the countries that, again, are considered the donor countries. So the donor countries then, 36 of them, will have a common process. It's going to be based on the co-creation wheel. In each country, there will be 12 sectors of involvement based on the co-creation wheel, and each country will have one representative for each sector. And the rules will be generated on how we're going to have meetings and that, but ultimately we'll have 36 people at the table, not 36 times 12, although there will be 36 times 12 representatives around the world in understanding what it is that we are doing. So we're really going to be an open source platform for information sharing and avoiding a lot of the pitfalls that evolve because of political correctness, or call it program delay. And let's talk about program for 1 second. The programs that we are going to be implementing are, one is the ISO 26000, and the ISO 26000. There is an MOU with between the ISO group and the UN Global Compact that all agencies of the UN will be informed of and taught the notions of the ISO 26000. The UN Global Compact has not lived up to that obligation of that MOU, and that's one of the programs we will be doing. And if anyone at the UN has a complaint about the fact that we're doing what they should be doing, let them speak up or keep their mouth shut. The other program is the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. Now, that too is an integral program that we're going to be teaching people. UNDRIP is a recently 2010, but recently passed in Canada as an act on Bill 262 and C-262, and that act empowers all Canadian law to be affected by UNDRIP. Now, unfortunately, the guy in charge, the Director General in charge of the education of our society and those ideas and the quality of the information in UNDRIP, he is already starting backwards, and I've written him a letter already informing him that he's doing it backwards, that he doesn't just bring in the Indigenous people in order to implement UNDRIP. UNDRIP affects all Canadians. UNDRIP replaces the Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, because now all people are human beings. The Declaration of 48 did not allow for Indigenous people to be included in that category. So this is a major breakthrough in understanding, if we can get this Director General to understand that his job is to educate all people in Canada, change all laws in Canada to incorporate UNDRIP. This is a major misstep that they're planning, and I hope those people that hear about this impending disaster that I think he's a Director General, strategic direction for UNDRIP, or Bill 262, that he needs to look at all law, not just law where Indigenous people may have been involved. It's all law. We are all treaty people. That's one of the common aspects of our nature living in Canada. We are all treaty people. And it's about time those people in governments of our country understand that we are all treaty people. And that's another thing that we are going to be educating people in the UN Office of the Future. We're going to understand who we are, why we're here, and what we're doing in terms of the whole planet. The 1% solution ought to deliver enough funds in order to have us develop the programs necessary without us begging from the government for funding. The governments ought to fund at the level of 0.7%, as was expressed by Lester B. Pearson, 0.7% of GDP. And we will try and hold them to that, but 0.3% from corporations. But what was left out of Lester Pearson's model was that human people will also pay, and they will pay 1% of what they spend. So we're beginning right away with a credit card through MNBA, and we will have a credit card that ties 1% of whatever we spend, and it will go to support the UN Office of the Future operating in our country. And we will have that same capacity in every country that we go to, so that each country will be self-funding and will not have to go to the international community for funding, because after all, we are the donor countries. We are the rich countries, and we have to bear the responsibility of how we share what we have on our beautiful planet. Which brings me to the prime directive. All receiving is for the purpose of sharing. All receiving is for the purpose of sharing. Whether we're a donor country or a receiving country, when we receive, we'll receive it for the purpose of sharing. So we will stop all the corruption and bribery and all the other things on the planet as we move forward into the into the second decade of the third decade of the 21st century. And I think that's our elevator pitch. It's under 15 minutes. I think that we've talked about UNDRIP, we've talked about ISO 26000, we've talked about the Madrid documents, we've talked about the 1% solution. What we haven't talked about is AMBER, the importance of AMBER, and how we're going to use AMBER to raise money to help the people down in Mexico, and COPAL, which we're going to use to help raise the consciousness of the planet. So we're going to start global marketing of AMBER and COPAL. Those are our immediate programs, and we are going to do a documentary on the stories that relate to how we got to know what we know, and how did we get to this position. Here we are in June of 2019, and we are just now implementing the Madrid documents of 2000. Wow, 19 years later. Well, and we're going to be marketing AMBER 37 years after we first came out with the idea of marketing AMBER to help raise world consciousness. So everything is in its time, and we're still healthy. We're growing younger every day, and life is good on this beautiful planet that we call home. I welcome you to sign up, get a credit card, and that's your easiest way to participate in our program. Wherever you spend money, it goes. Go put it on your card, and you will be helping the planet. From your lips to God's ears, wouldn't that be amazing? Hey, let's do it.